Hi, this is Paul Solt from iPhone Dev TV, and we're ready to get started with our first iPhone app using Xcode. If you don't have Xcode open, I just want you to either go over to the right. If it's on your menu bar, you can just click on it to open it. Or if you don't have it open, we'll just go up top and you'll type in Xcode and then either press enter or click on the top hit, and that will open up Xcode. We're using Xcode 5.0.2. If you're watching this at a later date, you'll probably see a different version here. That's fine. As long as it's Xcode 5, everything will look the same. We're going to create a new Xcode project, and you can either do that by clicking on this button, but if this window doesn't appear, you can come up to File, New, Project. So let's just do it this way in case you don't see this window when you start up Xcode. And once this pops up, we'll see a new Xcode window just come to the front of the screen. And we have the options to choose between an iOS app or an OS X app. We're going to go with the iOS application, so select that. That will limit our options. And then on the top right, we want the single view application. Once you have that, hit next. And here we'll give it a product name. We're calling this Days 2 Weeks. Next, I have my organization name. This, I'm just using my name, so just use your name or your company's name. It's not super important. We're just learning, so this isn't mission critical if you write the wrong value. For the company identifier, you're going to use a reverse website. This is reverse DNS. So here, just pretend you own a website in your name or your company's name and write com dot whatever the website name is. This just needs to be unique. If you are a registered iPhone developer, this needs to match whatever you've registered with, and then you can run the iPhone app on a real device rather than just the simulator. To make things easier so you can see what's going on, in these courses, I will just be using the simulator so that you can see everything on one screen. You can ignore the class prefix and then make sure you select iPhone if it's on Universal. Universal builds it for both to reduce the complexity and make everything simpler. With our initial applications, we're just going to stick to iPhone. Now we'll hit next. And here I like to save it in a projects directory on my desktop. So if you go to your desktop, you can create a new folder. And I just put it in projects. As you can see, I have a ton of test projects. It's really important that you're not afraid to start over or to make a new project. Anytime I need to test something, I generally start a new project just so I can focus on that one particular piece of code or that user interface thing that I want to try out for a first time. Or if I forgot how to do something, I'll start a new Xcode project. You can ignore the Git repository unless you're comfortable with version control, and then we'll just press create. Now we're looking at Xcode. It is setting itself up. We see some information in the center. You see a version number. You'll typically see these on an iPhone app when you download updates. We can see what type of version we're targeting. Currently, this is 7.0. Again, it's just iPhone. And we've got other settings for the app icons, which we can find in Images, Assets. Currently, these are blank. So if you want to spice up your app, this is where you need to look. You can drag and drop, or you can right click on these options and add different files. So we can import files here. On the left side in our project navigator, we have our app.delegate.h and our .m. Remember, in Objective-C, we have two code files, just like in C++ or C. And we have our header and our implementation file. So think of M as implementation. In here, when an app first launches, we have a line in code right here that we could execute. This is the first spot. So I could just print out a message with the nslog function. We'll just do first run, and you put the semicolon. So once we have this code, if we go to our top left corner, we can hit the run button, and we should see an iPhone appear. It might take a little bit of time on your first launch. Right now we're looking at an iPhone 3.5-inch screen. So this is an iPhone 4 or 4S. And in the bottom down here, we see our console output has been displayed. On this left side, we'll see variables, and we'll only see that when we're debugging, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And then we have our main.storyboard file. So when I open up this, we see our canvas in the center. Now again, everything in Xcode is configurable. So we can hide and show panels with these buttons, and we can get rid of the bottom panel. So let's go ahead and stop our application since there's nothing on it and we have to configure it. On the bottom right, we're going to be looking at our object library here. And so that's this little cube. If you don't see it, you might have to change the height. So just grab this and drag it up so that you can see it. And then when we first look at this, we'll see either a list view like this, where you can scroll down and see more information about all of them, or you can switch to the grid view. I like using the grid view, but if you don't know what these different things are, the other view might be more descriptive. Now, our interface that we're trying to make is the days to weeks app. So we're going to need 2 text fields, and I'm just going to go ahead, click on one and drag it left, and then we'll click on another and drag it left. So we've got 2 text fields now. I need a label for the top, and then 2 labels for the sides. And now we're going to go ahead and we can just double click on one of these and change this to days to weeks, just to have a title for our application. Now I want to make this size bigger. So what I'm going to do is come over to the right side and click on the, you need to have this tab open, and then we need to be on the attributes inspector. So that's this little slider icon. When we're here, we'll see a font just a couple lines down. And if we click on that, we can make this bigger. So let's double it to 34. And now we see that it doesn't quite fit. So there's actually a way to fix this. And you'll see here there's a size to fit content. That's the command or Apple equal sign. And so if I just click on that, we should be able to run that hotkey. So if you ever see that it's not fitting, you come up to editor and you select size to fit content. If it's ever grayed out, just make sure that you click on it so it is highlighted and then do size to fit content. Once we do that, we can actually center this and put it right under our status bar. So we'll see these blue dashed lines for the guides, and we can just place it right there. Next, I need to change these labels. So we need to have days and then weeks. Okay, now I want to align this information together. So I'm going to just drag days over and then drag weeks over, and aligning it with that sort of right edge. And that is the standard distance away from a control. Generally, I then center it vertically through the text field. So we'll just drop it there, and then I'll just check the next one and do the same thing. Now that I have that centered, we can actually click and drag with the left mouse button, and we can put this right underneath. Now, one of the cool things that we can do in this interface designer is if we ever need multiple things, we can always do a Command C and then a Command V to paste, and so we can have a duplicate item. Or we can just hold the Alt key or the Option key and drag from another object to create more objects. So that's how we can quickly create things without having to come all the way to the right side to drag out. So if you want to duplicate something, that is one of the fastest ways to do it. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. so that we're just left with this, and we need one button. So we'll see button on the right side, drag that out, and we'll center it and put it right underneath. And then we'll change the text to convert. And then we might need to realign that since it changed widths. And so now everything is centered right underneath. We go ahead and hit the run button. And now we have something more pretty to look at. This is our first iPhone app. And we can click on the text fields. And we can press the button. But nothing happens. So we can type in text here. Now, since we're going to be dealing with numbers, we're going to want to change the default keyboard that we see down here to be the numerical value. And that's some setting that we can set with the utilities panel. So we want to type in numbers and then hit convert. So we can do that by clicking on our text fields. We can do one at a time, or we can hold shift and click on multiple. Or if you're feeling adventurous, you can select them both by dragging a box with the left mouse button. And then we can come over here. We might need to move this down. And we'll scroll down until we see the keyboard. Here it's set to default. And I can change this to numbers and punctuation. Or I can change it to a number pad, or a phone pad, or a decimal pad. Whatever one I want. Generally, I like numbers and punctuation just because I think it looks nicer. And if we stop and run again, we will see that numbers and punctuation popped up first. So that's a quick little fix that you can do without writing any code, just using the interface designer to customize the layout. Now, if we wanted to, we could also change our background color so it's not just our default white background. And if we change it, we could go to a red or a blue color or a gray. Let's be adventurous and go red. See how that looks. It's a little bit too flashy, so let's maybe try orange or cyan. So play around with those settings if you want to customize the look and feel of your first iPhone app. Pause the video if you're still trying to catch up and rewatch any parts that you need in order to get to this spot. From here, we're now going to connect our interface to our code file, and we're going to use one of the special buttons on the top, the tuxedo button, to show us the assistant editor, which will allow us to look at multiple files at the same time and connect from interface to code file. So I'm going to click on the tuxedo. Now we'll see two files, and we're running out of space here. So I'm going to hide our right panel, and we can hide the bottom panel as well, so we can see more of the iPhone app here. And on our right side, we're right now looking at viewcontroller.m. We could switch it to viewcontroller.h. Remember, these two files go together. So you've got your header file, which is the .h file, and then you've got your .m file, which is your implementation file. And you can quickly see that because in your header file, you'll see @interface, and then in your .m file, you'll see @implementation. Now, you sometimes also have an @interface here. That's more of a new thing that will be automatically generated for you, where you can have more or less private properties or methods or instance variables that aren't exposed in your .h file. But if you're not familiar with that, don't worry too much. We're going to go ahead and connect our interface here to the code. And the way we can do that is if we right-click and drag, you'll see this line appears and it says Insert Outlet Action or Outlet Connection. And we can do this to either our .h file or our .m file. For this one, I'm going to do it to the .h file, and you just need to drag it inside of interface. Once we do that, we see that it's going to be a connection type of outlet, which is what we want, and we're going to call this our days text field. And you can just double check that it's a text field where you see the type. So if it doesn't say text field, you might be connecting the wrong thing. If it said something like UI view, that's not the right thing. So hit cancel and retry. And we'll see that the storage type is weak. Then we hit connect, and Xcode will automatically generate that code. And we'll also see this little circle here. When we hover over that circle, it will highlight where it's connected on the left panel in the interface designer. So all of this code was automatically generated for us. And we can do the same thing with our weeks. And just let go and connect that. So connect it to the weeks text field and press enter or the connect button, and then we're connected. Now, alternatively, if you have a trackpad, you can do a couple different things. You can use your index finger to move around, and then if you want to connect, you can do a 2-finger tap on a UI element, and you can drag it over to the right. Now, you can use both fingers to drag, but that's a little bit challenging. So if you, after you click, you lift up your index finger with your middle finger still down, you can actually use your index finger to move that around, and that's a little bit easier, especially when you need to reach from side to side on your screen. Now, if I let go here, it's going to allow me to create an outlet to a UI button. Generally, we don't want to create an outlet for a UI button unless we want to change some of the properties of the button, so how it looks or what text is displayed in it. So here we need to make sure that we select action, and then here we're going to call it convert button. So we're being descriptive as to what UI element is invoking this action, and we're saying that it's going to be pressed. Now here we see the type. We can change this to UI button if we wanted to make it a little bit more clear. And the event that's being triggered here is the touch up inside. And so right here we have a lot of different events that we can respond to. We can have the touch up inside or the touch up outside. And the difference between those is you can imagine tapping your finger down on a button and then letting go straight up. That would be a touch up inside. But a touch up outside is kind of like a cancel. So if you wanted to do something special for that, you could touch a button, and then without picking up, you slide your finger off of the button and let go. That would be a touch up outside. So there's all these different events that we can respond to, but the most common one is this touch up inside. So we'll just leave that as is, and then we can connect it. Now, if you don't like using 2 fingers, you can also use the control button. And so if I hold control with a trackpad, I can click once, and here we'll see all of our different actions. So touch up inside is near the bottom, and you would just need to drag that out and connect it. Since we're already connected, that's fine. But if you ever need to remove one of these, you can just hit the X and it goes away, and then we can reconnect that. So sometimes you can run into issues where you change one of the settings over here, and you'll see some kind of warning symbol on this view. And another way to get to that view without using the control key is to just right click on any of the UI elements, and we'll see the same type of thing. So touch up inside for UI buttons. And if we right click on our weeks text field, at the very bottom, we'll see our referencing outlets, and we see that it is connected to the weeks text field in the view controller. If I want to remove that, I just click on the X, and now we have no new referencing outlets. So if I wanted to connect that, just so we can see everything, let's move that around. And I just drag from this little circle, and I don't want days, I want weeks. So I just drag it over, and you should see that it allows us to switch between the different ones. We let go, it's connected, and we can see what variable it is connected to. Okay, we are all set up with connecting our outlets, and we have an action. So if we now click on the .h file on the left, what we'll be able to do is show both the .h and the .m files. So on the left here, we have our .h file, which you can see in the top breadcrumbs. And then we have our counterpart, which is the .m file. Now, you can always choose how you want this to go. If you wanted to show a particular file, you could always select it. Counterparts is nice because it will show you a related file. And since a .h file goes together with a .m file, we can see the two things side by side. At the very bottom is where we're going to be adding code. If you want, you can get rid of this did receive memory warning, and we can add some code here at the bottom. So that's going to be our first statement. I'll stop it, we'll run it, and we'll just verify that our button works. I hit convert, and it says convert days to weeks. So we see that running along the bottom. If you accidentally click right here where you see the numbers, and if you don't see numbers on your Xcode, I want you to turn that on. So go to Xcode, Preferences, and then click on Text Editing. There's a checkbox for numbers. So if I click on this checkbox under Text Editing, you'll see that the numbers appear and disappear. And this is really helpful when you're trying to solve a problem and you want to remember where you were in your code file. So if you tap in this gutter, you can set a breakpoint. And a breakpoint you can get rid of by just dragging it away, or you can delete them. But breakpoints will stop your program from running. So it looks like nothing's happening when that type of thing happens. So if I hit convert, all of a sudden the app stops running. And on our left side, we're seeing new information that is showing us what's running. So our main method started, and that started the UI application, which is the start of an iPhone app. And now we're seeing a perform selector with object. And then here we see the convert button was pressed. So it's trying to call our method, and we have a breakpoint here. And so the way we get out of a breakpoint is we can just hit the continue button, or we can disable breakpoints and then hit continue. If you have multiple breakpoints, it'll stop every time it hits one of those. And it's just a way for you to stop the application from running all the way. As you can see, we see first run, but we don't see our next message, convert days. And so when we step over, which is this little button right here, we'll see that it says convert days to weeks. All right, with that, we can just resume execution with this little button right here, and everything will work. And now I just want you to right click and delete the breakpoint if you had set one accidentally or intentionally. So now our app is working again. If we press the button, it doesn't stop and everything is good to go. So let's get our project navigator back and just move this back over. And we want to focus on our code in the convert button press. So it moved it around. The .m file is now on the left instead of the right. You can switch that back if you just click back on the files, and then it's back over here. So whatever your preference is, we can also switch off of it and go back to the standard editor with just the one code file open. So once we do that, let's go ahead now and grab the input that the user is going to type in here, and we're going to create a variable, a floating point variable called days, assign that to the value that we're going to return here. So I'm going to start with a square bracket because I know I want to do a method call, and in Objective-C, when we do methods, we need to surround them with the square brackets. Now, the object that I want to work with, I need to get access using the self pointer. That is a special pointer that's passed in on any method call in Objective-C. And in here, we will select our days text field. And so you can see that we have access to this property. That P on the left of UITextField that we see that just popped up means property, and it's days text field. So I can hit tab to autocomplete. And then this has a lot of different attributes. So these are all the attributes for a text field. Some of them are inherited. using class inheritance, and some of them are specific to the UITextField. So if we just type in text, we should see NSString, and that is what we want. So we press enter and then space. And now we want to do a method call. And so again, if we start typing something, or if we press escape after the space, we can see all the different method calls that we can invoke on an NSString. So what we did here is we used our pointer to get access to our property, which is a UITextField, which has another property, which is an NSString. So let's finish writing this line of code. And I want to take this and convert it to a float value. So basically what we're doing here is a step that I could have done in 2 steps. And I'll write those 2 steps down here. So we could have done it like this, and then we could have said days is equal to days string float value. And so that would be doing the same stuff that we did above. So that's 2 steps in 1 line of code. And if you're not familiar, this is a comment. We do the // and anything after that is considered a comment and it is ignored by the program. So now that we have the days, we can convert and turn that into weeks. So we'll create a new variable called float weeks, assign that to days divided by 7, and then have our semicolon at the end of the line. In Objective-C, we need to remember to put semicolons just like in Java or C or C++ at every line of code. And that just means it's the end. It's kind of like a period. With that, we can now access our weeks text field, which is our property. And then that has a property called text. And we can assign that to a new value. And so here we're going to have to convert our weeks into a number. And so we'll use the @ symbol with the parentheses, and then we can give it an expression here. And so our expression is going to be weeks. And so that's going to give us an NS number. So now we can invoke a method call on this, and we can turn this into a string. So if you want more information about any of these things, you can hold the Option or the Alt key, and then that should show a question mark. And if you click on something, it should show you the information about what it is. And you can read that. And then down here, we can see this. Again, what we did here, this turns our float into an NS number object. And as an NS number object, we have a method call that can turn the number into a string or a text value that we can assign back to the app. So now if we stop and rerun, we should be able to type in 21 or something like that. And if we hit the convert button, we see 3. So it's converting this into a number, doing division, and then converting the number, that's the result, back into a text and updating it. And if you had a bigger number, you could convert that and see how that looks. So that's our first introduction into creating an iPhone app. You can play around with the math in here. Maybe you want to change the app a little bit so it's not converting weeks and it's doing something else. This is really your starting point to understand how Xcode works. If at any point you got stuck, pause this video while you're working and resume, or any of the other videos that you watch. And in the next video, I'm going to show you some common mistakes and how to recover them. So if you're still stuck and things aren't working, don't worry, just watch the next video and I'll try and uncover some of those issues for you.